really it's a question of what kind of things are you dealing with in each place, because you have some pretty significant problems, some pretty significant systemic issues, to borrow a woke term, in all of them. But if you're in a rural school, especially if like you went there and now you're sending your kids there, you just wouldn't realize, because it's changed so much over the last 20 years.
Welcome to Faith in Action. Thanks for listening today, and Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm your host, Matthew Nowlin.
And I'm Shawn Graham.
We lead Conservative Christians of Tennessee, and we are thankful you're joining us today. Conservative Christians of Tennessee exists to analyze political policy and politicians in Tennessee, both in the government and in our churches, and all from a conservative Christian worldview. We want to glorify God by helping you to glorify God, so please don't hesitate to send us any questions or comments via email. You can reach me directly by emailing Matthew@tnchristian.com.
Or Shawn, SHAWN, @tnchristian.com.
And if you want to help me beat the shadow ban on X, follow me. I'm at MNBookman. Make sure to turn on notifications for me because, hey, I talk about Christian things. X doesn't like it, but join me. Today's show is brought to you in the Memphis area by Herbi-Systems. Give Herbi-Systems a call at 901-290-7744 for all your lawn care needs. Since 1984, Herbi-Systems has been the premier lawn care and landscape company in the Mid-South. So give Herbi-Systems a call today. Again, that's 901-290-7744, or visit Herbi-Systems.com and let them kill your weeds. Our scriptures for today, straight out of Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 21. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Today, we're happy to welcome back David Harris. David is the executive director of TruthScript, which is a Christian publication and network. They have a great website, truthscript.com. He has degrees in English literature and linguistics, as well as a master's of science in education from the State University of New York. He's taught a variety of subjects from K through 12 in both private and public schools. He's been involved in various ministries in New York, Southern Africa, and the Dominican Republic. He lives in the shadow of the Great Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee with his wife and daughters. David, welcome, sir, to Faith in Action.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Now I'm on the Cumberland Plateau region of Tennessee.
That's why he's turned into such the hiking aficionado. It's beautiful in that area.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take you up on what we talked about in the pre-interview, and we're going to go to the Valley of the Three Forks of the Wolf. We're going to hike the walls of Jericho, and we're going to have some good conversation while we do it. So, David, we wanted to have you on because, first of all, your website is just fantastic, truthscript.com. It's like a Christian version of the Gospel Coalition, so we love it. And you have great articles up all the time. There is a lot of challenging articles that you have. Like you've got an article up right now that we think is great, that we know, sadly, and we're not doing this to be provocative, we're doing this because we want to be persuasive. We think it would upset some people listening to this. It's titled, "Is It a Sin to Send Your Children to Public School?" In it, you arguing that sending kids to public school isn't necessarily a sin, but that it often reflects a lack of wisdom. So tell us why you wrote that. Is that clickbait or is that soul nurturing truth?
Well, in 2025, clickbait is kind of the name of the game in some ways, so it might be a little clickbaity, but no, I mean, I believe everything I said. My background is, at least how I was educated was as a homeschooler, K-12. So my whole schooling experience was homeschooling until I got to college. When I was in my early 20s, I started teaching for the public school system in New York State and got a very, very rude awakening to what the state of public schools actually are. So the case that I kind of make in this piece is it's not a sin to send your kids to public school in the same way that it wasn't a sin for Daniel to be involved in the government of Persia or Babylon in his positions. God can use you wherever you are. I'm still a public school teacher. More what I'm hoping that Christians think through is, what are the components of wisdom? How can you apply wisdom to your child's schooling? And for a lot of parents, they don't really know what's going on in public schools. They don't know what the situation is. So that's what I'm trying to bring light to.
We're not going to know what's going on in public schools unless we have another COVID, where parents actually have to watch what their kids are going through in the classroom on a computer screen. It's wild to me that it took that for many parents to know what was going on, despite, raving lunatics like me and Shawn telling them, every couple of months what's going on in public schools.
You've seen the horrors. When you came into it versus where you are now, how much has it changed?
It's probably gotten better since you're not seeing it anymore, right? You're
not in New York
now, so it's gotten better.
I'd love to hear the difference there.
Yeah,
sure. American public schools, it's a huge, multi-billion-dollar industry. Basically, there's a lot of people making a lot of money on the public school system, especially as ed tech companies have taken off. There's massive million-dollar contracts. Companies that are created kind of out of the ether, and everybody's fighting for contracts with the school system. That's curriculum, that's ed tech, food that goes into the school system. It is a massive industry.
The whole industry in 2023, estimated expenditures between federal and state and all the support programs for it were right at $947 billion nationally. So we've got to be over $1 trillion now with the Biden inflation. So yeah, it's big.
It's massive. So public schools vary across the country depending on where you are. But the thing with public schools is that the variance can be dramatic within a few miles. So I teach in Tennessee now. When I lived in New York, I taught in an inner city school district. It was about 70% Black, 30% Latino, with a token Irish kid mixed in. The family's never left for whatever reason, kind of all throughout the classes. But urban public schools, it doesn't matter where you go. You can be in Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville. You can be in any urban area in Tennessee or anywhere else in the country. Urban public schools are pretty awful. You're talking about a ton of violence, ton of drugs. The district I worked in, most teachers had been assaulted at some point by a student. Stabbings, shootings, riots, stuff that you never hear on the news, but is just typical. It happens every week. And that's why you don't hear about it, because it's so typical. And that really goes back to the late 1960s, when you really started to have problems in urban public schools, when discipline kind of started to fall out of favor, and quote unquote restorative justice kind of started to take off. Also, urban areas are where you're going to have more directly woke education. So if you go out to the middle of nowhere in Tennessee and you go to the local K-12 school, you're not going to get, what we would call wokeness. You're not going to see pride flags and trans flags. You're going to see Bible verses. You're going to see the people who live there and who are from there and who went to those schools reflected, on the walls and in the classrooms and everything. So there is a big difference between going to a rural public school, even in Tennessee, but that difference can be a couple of miles. So you can be even in a small town in Tennessee, and the school in the center of the town, even if it's not a very big town, like Crossville is not a very big town. It's like 10,000 people. But the schools in the center of the town are going to be very different from the ones at the outlying schools in the rural areas. So really, it's a question of what kind of things are you dealing with in each place, because you have some pretty significant problems, some pretty significant systemic issues, to borrow a woke term, in all of them. But if you're in a rural school, especially if like you went there and now you're sending your kids there, you just wouldn't realize, because it's changed so much over the last 20 years.
Well, we want to come back to this in just a second, David, but I want to first mention our sponsor, Navita IT Managed Services. We want to talk about them because they are more than a help desk. They're more than a network administrator. They're more than an IT project manager. Navita IT Managed Services is a company founded and operated by Christian community leaders who have decades of business consulting and analytics experience. While many IT companies are reacting to whatever just broke, Navita is proactively looking ahead, and they want to understand how money, relationships, and people flow through your business so they can help your business. Navita IT Managed Services works to keep your business growing as a healthy part of God's kingdom, and they help churches and business leaders lead the target so they can be the most effective and efficient business and church leaders possible. Visit their website. It's Navita, Navita, NavitaITManagedServices.com today. learn more about Navita IT Managed Solutions. This is legitimately something we're excited about, to have a veteran-owned Christian business like Navita on board with us as we head into 2026. And we know you'll love using them for your IT service solutions. Now we're back with David Harris of TruthScript. And Dave, we were just going over, basically, urban schools are always going to be bad. You said that explicitly. And depending on where they are in the town and what part of the county you're in, you know, they might be a hotbed of sexual grooming, tech addiction, the socialist ideologies. So Ephesians 6:4 commands us to bring up children in the Lord's discipline. Does this compel parents to pull out, or should they send their kid and hope their kid's going to be salt and light in the public school systems?
Again, I think it depends on the family. So I think it's going to vary family to family. I should say I know of families who have sent their kids to public schools and their kids have turned out okay. But there's lots of things that people do where they turn out okay. People go to war and survive, and some people don't. It's still very dangerous to go to war. So you have to apply wisdom, right? Scripture talks about, there's a lot of things that we like to make, I think, hard, fast rules about, like this is always a sin or that's always a sin. And there's lots of things that are, like it is a sin to fornicate, right? So that's very clear in Scripture. But there's a lot of things that are more applying wisdom. So when it comes to public school, as a general rule, and I'm saying this as somebody who has spent nearly a decade in the public school system, I would say do not send your kids to public school. Do whatever you can to avoid it if you can. Not everybody is in a situation that they can, but I would move mountains to make sure they don't end up there. And I think
it's the easiest thing to make an excuse not to do. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. My wife could be working right now, and we could be a lot more comfortable. I mean, listeners, if you want to support us at patreon.com/Christian, right now we are a one vehicle family, despite having two vehicles. My wife's at home with our kids. It's incredibly important to us. And so I think it's easy to make excuses. A lot more people could do it than do it and that think they can do it.
And Matt, you're choosing to make a decision that's best for your family. And that's what I want to hear from David here. The alternatives are almost non-negotiable. When you come to the realization that God has moved you in this direction and you have to raise your children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, when you come to that directive and God has opened you up to it, I think that's the moment where it becomes sin for you. And God shows you that light that you have to do this. I don't think that everyone is called to minister to foreign, the African worlds. I don't think that's everybody's stance. And I think this is a similar thing, but I don't understand the mindset that says that you have to send your children off and be missionaries, because I don't think that's their job to win the school system. So I agree that it's not sin, but I think that we can sin by sending our kids into an environment where they're destined to fail.
Yeah, and I sort of mentioned this in my piece. If you know all this, if you kind of know all and again, when I'm talking about public school, like if I'm talking to a family and I'm trying to convince them to pull their kids out of public school, I don't generally focus on wokeness and sexual growth. I don't focus on those things because that's so far down the list of issues before you even get to that point. If your school's already at that point, and I'm from New York, a lot of the especially suburban schools are that way. You have one of the first schools I worked in was had multiple LGBT teachers and they had big flags in their classroom. So why would you send your kids into that? You don't hear Christians, and I'm from New York, so you don't hear a lot of Christians who understand what's at stake with their children. It's not even a question. You don't send your kids to public school because it's such hostile territory. And when the Bible Belt, it's different. People tend to assume that the school that they went to is still the school that exists, and it's not. It's just not there. And it's not just with wokeness and grooming and all that. It's the very structure of the way that the school works, the very point that they're there, the things that they're being prepared for. So there's a very big difference between, depending on where in the country you're coming from and what people's assumptions. And Christians, especially in the South and the Bible Belt and more red areas, will assume the best about their schools without thinking through it a lot.
Well, what happens when you assume about public school, you know what happens is your kids grow up woke. Your kids grow up woke. So no, I would agree with you. This is a wisdom issue, but to put it really succinctly, if you don't know exactly what's going on in your child's classroom, you're probably sinning against your child, and you're sinning against God because you don't know if you're raising them up in the way that they should go.
Right.
So going back to what we said earlier, if you don't know as much about what's going on in their classroom as you did when their classroom was on like a little 12-inch Chromebook screen during COVID, then you probably there's a good chance you're sinning against your kid.
Yeah, so I'll put it this way: it would be a sin for me to send my kids. It would absolutely be a sin for me to do it, because I know it's at stake for them, and I know what the costs are going to be of that. Even one that I was working in, and I've been asked this question by people that I work with. Would you send your kids here? And I always say no, I wouldn't. I couldn't, because I know what they're going to get here versus what my wife can provide them and what I can provide them. And to go back to what you said earlier, just because I've put my money where my mouth is. My wife was a nurse. She was fired for not getting the COVID jab. I moved across the country because of that, just trying to find a place that we could make ends meet. We just moved again because we moved to East Tennessee, and everybody from California moved there and jacked up the prices on everything. So we moved to the Cumberland Plateau, where things are much more affordable. I will make any sacrifice I have to make to ensure that my kids are raised by my wife, that she is the one who's home with them, that I can be with them when I get home from work. And I pray for the kids that I work with, because I know what the cost is going to be for them.
That's good. So you showed a scary reality, and I want to talk about another reality. And that's the reality of how the kids are viewed, how they're taught, how they're gathered, sorted, just all these things. But public education basically treats kids as data points, and it promotes equity over excellence. And this seems contrary to Proverbs 9:10. Shawn and I both agree the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We think that, and we agree with that, because that's what the Bible says many, many times, specifically and explicitly. We don't think government indoctrination is going to teach kids fear of the Lord. To us, we think, and I want to know what you think, does this basically make homeschooling or Christian alternatives almost a non-negotiable?
Well, I mean, so I bring up Christian schools, private schools in my piece as well, because a lot of people, and I know especially in New York, because before I worked in public schools, I worked in private schools. And a lot of Christian families assumed that if they sent their kids to private school, then that would be the fix. Well, I said, I worked really hard. I mean, a lot of people sacrifice a lot to be able to send their kids to private school, especially in states where there's no voucher program, there's no other options, that you're just paying out of pocket to send your kids to usually very expensive private schools. But a lot of those private schools, and again, I'm not there's lots of great private schools, so I'm not slamming private schools at all. I support, especially classical Christian schools. I'm a big fan. But a lot of private schools, they're adhering to the same state standards. So they're still having to cover the same thing. So my first job was teaching social studies to 7th through 12th grade. And even though I, was in even though I was in a Christian school, because I had to teach through the New York State Regents exam, that was what mattered. That's what their grade was. I really didn't have time to teach the things that I thought would be most valuable. I had to cover this material for this test. And that test was basically civil rights, slavery, and towards the end, it got into, some LGBT stuff even. But that curriculum did not prioritize the things that I really would have built up in my kids. And that was a private school. So just because you can't just send your kids to a private school and assume that's going to take care of. Homeschooling, in my opinion, is the best guarantee to be able to have the most influence on what your kids are actually learning, which is why that would be a non-negotiable for me. And I would encourage any family, you care more about your kids' education than anybody else on the planet. You're going to be the most invested. But a lot of parents think that they can't do it. I'm not educated enough. Let me tell you something. In the schools, they're learning from apps. It's all apps. So if you know how to work an app, you can do what they're doing in the public school, at least.
Yeah. Folks, we want to remind you about our official missions sponsor, Equipping the Persecuted. We've been telling you for years now about the genocide and murder of Christians in Nigeria. And we know of one missions group there on the ground doing the Lord's work to save our fellow believers. That is equippingthepersecuted.org. Your support is part of a lifeline of aid, security, and hope. If you make a monthly donation, it will create sustainable help for people in real need. You can support their work by visiting equippingthepersecuted.org today. You could sponsor an orphan for just $35 a month, or now you can order African coffee and have it shipped straight to your home. Every bag of Equipping the Persecuted coffee that you purchase does more than fill up your cup. It strengthens the body of Christ because 100% of the proceeds go directly to support persecuted Christians in Nigeria. Shawn loves the Guardian blend, but you can try any of their flavors today. Again, that's equippingthepersecuted.org, and the persecuted Christians in Nigeria, thank you. We're back with David Harris of Truth Script. And David, we have some time left. If folks feel like we left some of those questions unanswered, please tell them, first of all, about where they can read this article, this very clickbaity titled article that we think was done in the deepest Christian love and affection, not just clickbaity stuff. Tell them about Truth Script, please.
Yeah, sure. So Truth Script was founded almost 3 years ago. It was created to be an alternative to websites like Christianity Today and Gospel Coalition that have just been peddling a lot of nonsense over the last really 15 years or so. Christianity Today, it's been a lot longer than that. And we publish articles, but the focus of Truth Script has been to publish and platform people who otherwise would not have had the opportunity, because there is not we publish a lot of pastors of small churches throughout the country. We are a donor-based 501c3 organization. If the Lord would move you, especially in this Christmas season, to support us, we would covet your support.
Talk more about what you mean that it's merit-based. Does that mean that you publish the articles if they're good, not just because of who wrote them?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And not everyone is published, but we have a submission tab. I'm the editor. I'm the lead editor. So I've written a guide so that your layman Christian, if they're even a halfway decent writer, and if they have something important to say, then they can follow that guide and they can submit something to Truth Script. And we found a lot of great guys. We've done a lot of excellent networking. Our most read article is called No Christians Cannot Vote for the Democrat Party. It's from Pastor Steph Brickley, who's a small town pastor in Wisconsin. So we found a lot of great people through this that otherwise never would have had the opportunity to be heard.
And it's good. Yeah. You guys do a really good job with. I can't let you get out of here without asking you what you think would be the declaration we need to give to pastors who are listening to this content right now, because you guys are positioning yourself against what they used to go to with Christianity Today and all those kind of things. Those are bad sources, but this is a good source. So what would you say to a pastor who's listening about empowering them to, start homeschool co-ops and church schooling? What would you say to them?
A lot of pastors have, pretty diverse flock. Usually you have people in all sorts of different positions in life and stations in life. So the temptation is going to be to say nothing. And especially in the Bible Belt, it's 80% of kids in the United States go to public school. I think it's like 81, 82%. So that's going to be the majority of your congregations typically. If it's a conservative church, more so in the Bible Belt than in the more secular parts of the country. But, pastors need to know what the problems with public schooling are, and whether they like it or not, they're the default leaders. Yep. Especially in education, because if the government has shirked its responsibility, and that's something I get to a little bit in the article, and I'll have more coming out about this soon. I'm working on a few other things, but they are going to be the ones who are looked to provide direction and answers. So pastor, you have to provide it to your people. So if that's establishing a homeschool co-op, if that's starting a school, give your people alternatives. I see a lot of positive fruit. Partially in Tennessee, there's so many people moving to this area. Really, since COVID, there are a lot of robust homeschool groups. They form very quickly. They're doing excellent work. There's a lot to be really encouraged about and excited about. I mean, you can go on Facebook and look up co-ops in your area, and you will find Christian conservative co-ops pretty much everywhere. So don't feel like this is something that you can't talk about or shouldn't talk about. You absolutely should, and people are looking to you for direction.
Yeah. Well, folks, that's going to do it for another episode of Faith in Action. Make sure one last time you know the website to go to. They have a ton of great articles that are actually Christian, truthscript.com. So thanks for joining us. Again, Faith in Action. We're glad you joined us in Nashville, Memphis, all over Tennessee, all over the surrounding states as we talk about more ways to put your faith into action. And if you want to hear more on this or on other topics, Head on over to botradionetwork.com. You can search for Faith in Action. There we have links to all of our past shows, or you can give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Just search for Faith in Action on Apple Podcasts. No matter where you listen, you always find guests sharing their wisdom about current events that affect Tennessee and the entire nation. And until next week, remember our favorite promise from the 15th chapter of the book of Exodus: the Lord shall reign forever and ever.